15, 16, 17-ish, I started going, this isn't sustainable. And personal note, went through a divorce, all kinds of stuff, and I'm going, well, if I want to meet somebody and actually have a relationship, I can't be taking every waking hour that I am outside of my clinic, which is from basically 8 in the morning till 6 or 7 at night, and then use that to be training. You know, that's not a life. So I started to wonder, okay, who are these guys that are healthy and what are they doing? And that's when I discovered Rob Wolf and the book Wired to Eat, and then it just snowballed from there. And so here I am many years later, a whole lot smarter, a whole lot more well-rested, and at this point in time, about 60 pounds lighter. I stay right around the 220 mark. And I don't work out 20 hours a week. I'm lucky if I work out at all, right? I mean, once in a great while I'll go for a run just to make sure I can still do it. And I go to the gym, and that's about it. So this is pretty close to about what I look like now. And those are my children and one friend. That Aiden and that gentleman are friends, and we went swimming and stuff like that. And I have family time, and I'm happy, and I don't get sugar lulls, and I don't crave things. So, you know, my trainer, Jace Robinson, when I used to go to the CrossFit gym all the time, his opening line and sales pitch to us was, well, why do we all work out? Because we just want to look good naked. Made sense to me. But when we really step back, what is nutrition? Who are you feeding? What are you feeding? And so if we think about that for a second and think about your genetics. So if you look at your genes, your bacteria, you know, you've got a few billion bacteria genetics, a couple trillion viri genetics in you. So if you think about genetics as a whole, you are, somebody throw out a number, what percentage of human DNA are you? Got an 80? Somebody else want to throw something out? You want to be the spoiler? So when you look at genetics, you are 1% human genetics. The rest of you are it's basically made up of bacterial DNA. So your thinking portion is the 1%. And it loves sugar. And it loves convenience foods. And those are the things that it loves. But much like we're a multicultural community in here. As we look at any of the holy books, the Bible, Quran, whatever else, we are all called to serve others. So you have to think about, you have to feed that trillion, billions of bacteria. What do the bacteria like? What does your microbiome? That's something you probably have heard. Yes?
Can I close that door? It's kind of noisy out there. I'm having
Sure.
a hard time.
Sure, go right
Is
ahead.
that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, who has heard the term the microbiome? Started out the microbiome, and those are basically the bugs in your gut. Now they call it the holobiome because you have your endocrine system, you have all these other things, and you are what is called a holobiome. And so when you are eating for your microbiome feeds on fiber. Just for giggles, what do you think the daily intake of fiber of the typical American is? Stunningly so. One time I just decided I wasn't going to change my diet at all, and what do I want to do? What do I want to look, how much fiber am I getting? I forget who mentioned fiber the first time for eating for the bacteria. So I use this handy dandy little app called Chronometer. And And so I popped that in there and I said, turn on the fiber tracker, and here we go. And so they are saying that when you eat optimally, if you read Dr. Terry Walls' work, she wants you getting at least 80 grams of fiber a day. So I am eating all of my smoothies and I eat all of this stuff and I have this very wide and varied diet and I'm broccoliing it up and this, that, and the other, and I'm getting maybe about 25 to 30 to 35 grams of fiber. And I was like, okay, what's 80 grams of fiber look like? So I set the target at 80 grams and I went through and I created a diet one day that would get me 80 grams of fiber. Oh, that's like I just chewing straw all day long. It took a lot. So so over time, using smoothies and things like that, I've gotten to where I do supplement with fiber. My morning coffee has somewhere in I think my morning coffee has 34 grams of fiber in it now. And so I use my coffee as a supplement. And so I love Calvin and Hobbes. If you ever just want to laugh, Calvin and Hobbes, it's a great comic. But nutrition, when I say what are you feeding, who are you feeding? If you look at these two gentlemen, Otto and Ewald, they're actually identical twins. One is a cross-country runner. One is a power lifter. So you can see how the difference in exercise and most poignantly, the difference in the diet, how it changes the body. Because the one gentleman had a higher carbohydrate diet. As you can tell, that's a little older picture. So they knew that he needed to fuel his body with carbohydrates and whatnot. And so he doesn't look nearly as fit as Ewald. And what happens when you eat lots of carbohydrates?
Sugar?
Converts to sugar very easily. What does sugar stimulate?
Insulin?
Yep. And so when you're eating lots of, especially simple carbohydrates and convenience carbohydrates, they stimulate a lot of insulin. Insulin is the fat packing hormone. And it's a very anabolic hormone, and it's a very inflammatory hormone. So when you're dinging insulin, you have a problem. If you are hypoglycemic, it's pretty much a myth at this point in time that we're hypoglycemic. Hypoglycemia happens when your body is dysbiotic, when you are eating a high carbohydrate diet and you're pretty much at that point in time insulin resistant. You get hypoglycemic because your insulin levels are so high in your body, it never gets a rest. It never goes away. And to start to tackle that hyperinsulinemia and to break through that, and I was there, it's several days of dizzy, of getting up and ooh, the world spins. Now I can tell you at that point in time, it sucked, but you're also not going to die. Typically. Depends on how bad you are. So, you have to start to think of your body as a race car, or a Ferrari, or whatever you want to say. We were listening to a podcast on the way in. J.J. Virgin was interviewing, I don't know the gentleman's name, but he said, it is quality of food, not quantity of food. And he's very true. The quality of your food makes a difference to the body. The quality of the calorie counts. I'm a car guy. I would rather have a Ferrari than a Volkswagen. I would rather have a Mercedes than a...
Yugo.
Yes, absolutely. If there are a lot of women in here that are so inclined, you might rather have a Coach or a Louis Vuitton than a second-hand bag. I don't know. You know, just pick what you want to pick and go for the analogy. Y'all get it at this point in time. So you have to look at food as is it real or is it fake? And I just finished watching a video, just Amazon Prime, Omens, Good Omens or something like that. But one of the guys, they replaced the 4 horsemen. So they took out pestilence and they put in pollution, and then they had famine. And famine was a marketing guy. And he created chow. You can't call it food because it's not food. There's nothing nutrient in it. It's chow. And I thought, wow, how appropriate to actually call, that would be what you call fast food. Fast food is chow. It is just substance, but there really isn't much nutrition. They add whatever nutrition they can back in. So this helps your body. This cleans out your body. This does good things. This clogs arteries. This creates inflammation. I'm not going to lie, I used to at one point in time, I would look at this slide and I would salivate because I'm like, man, I love a pizza. But now I think differently about it. Once in a while, it's a treat. But when's the last time we had pizza?
October
Of last year.
of last year.
Yeah.
I would love to have some Brussels sprouts with olive oil, please.
Yeah. That's interesting. She said, I'd love to have some Brussels sprouts with olive oil. So do you know what's in vegetables that you really need? Or in the fruit? Fiber is one, yeah, that's one part. But it's the polyphenols and the bioflavonoids. If you read Dr. Stephen Gundry's work, he wrote a book called The Plant Paradox, and he talks about lectins and phytates and stuff like that. So, he's also the one that talks about veganism. So if we look at, let's just take a small step back and let's talk about different tools. Think of nutrition or your diet as different tools. Okay? So if you have, and most of us in the United States have a nutrition problem. We have high blood pressure. We have diabetes. We are pre-diabetic. We have insulin resistance. We have all of these different things. And you can use different diets to help treat those things. Food is absolutely medicine. So if you look at veganism, vegetarianism, omnivorism, those 3 things, vegans, as I understand it, that's a more extreme portion of vegetarians. If you start to read studies about vegans, very long-lived subsect of the culture, of the population. Vegetarians are a very long-lived subset of the population. But they also have an inordinate amount of autoimmune diseases, thyroiditis, rheumatoid arthritis, things of that nature. For the very thing that I was talking about earlier, the phytates and the lectins. That comes out of Dr. Gundry's work from the Plant Paradox. You have to watch out when you're eating whole grains. Whole grains are very gluteinogenic, allergenic. They attack the body in a different way, especially in the United States. In the United States, our wheat, grains, and things like that, they're put through a deamidization process for the most part. So instead of the old school grinding of the wheat, a mechanical crushing and working of the wheat, we love to soak stuff in chemicals. I don't know why we love to add so much crap to stuff. I still can't figure out why when you process something, the more you process it, the cheaper it gets. That makes I should be able to go pick an ear of corn and this be the cheapest thing that I get. Not go buy cornmeal from Walmart, and for some reason, cornmeal is cheaper than corn. This thing had to get packaged, it had to get processed, it had to get sent, and this I just picked off the stalk. That makes 0 sense. And the reason why packaged food is cheaper is A, there's really not a whole lot of food in it. There's not a lot of nutrition in it, but then it's also subsidized. And anytime you read something that says enriched, just know that it's probably crap. They call it enriched because it's all in how you want to look at it. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? They enrich white bread because when they got the whole grain, they stripped it all out. And now, we're going to enrich it with iron, and we're going to enrich it with this stuff. So it's not real good. So vegans, I am not a fan of veganism. Most of the functional medicine doctors are not big fans of veganism. Vegans have to supplement. It's like the all carnivore diet. If you're eating all meat and just meat, in the beginning, you're going to take down your insulin resistance. You're going to feel better because you're taking out the carbohydrates, you're taking out a lot of insulin, but over the long term, and there's very few guys that have been really studied over the long term, but from what I've seen over the long term, when you have large amounts of protein, you start to target what is called mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, and that's an anabolic hormone. That's an anabolic hormone in us, and it can cause cancer. So if you're doing the all carnivore diet, please make sure that whatever you're consuming is pastured, grass-fed, and not confinement fed. The omega-6 fatty acids in those things, which are inflammatory to us, are through the roof. Now, with vegans, you have to get good fats. If you're not getting good fats, you're not making hormones. So when people are on statin drugs, what do statin drugs do? They block HMG coenzyme reductase A or something. I forget exactly what it is. But that blocks your own endogenous highest anti-inflammatory, ubiquinone, CoQ10. That's why they started to add it. Is anybody in here on a statin? I won't tell on you and I won't chastise you. I'm not, so nobody is. Good. So back in the 80s, when I was a chiropractor and Lance Armstrong was just crushing it and everybody was looking at what his nutritional things were and what's he taking and supplementing, and CoQ10 was all the big craze at the same time. And just go look at the studies. Look at how many people died from statin drugs and from long-term statin usage because of the very thing they wanted to prevent. In the beginning, statin drugs are fabulous as an anti-inflammatory. They do a wonderful job for knocking down inflammation short term. Long term, they cause the very thing that they're supposed to stop. And so people started to die. And they're like, why are these people all kicking off? And the pharmaceutical companies mean well. They really do. They want to help people. They know the more people that they help, the more money they make. They don't think really long term. There aren't really any long studies on any meds. They're too expensive. It's cost prohibitive. But anyway, getting back to it. So people were dying. How do we stop this? oh, we supplement with CoQ10.